Shall we get started? Let's get started. I tend to talk a lot, so we're going to need every minute of this time. Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Cheryl Hammond, and I am the conference chair this year. Thank you, Natalie, for giving me the opportunity to help put on the conference. When we talked about it last year, we thought this was going to be a party in Orlando. And I went to my local retail establishment. I got this awesome Women Support Women shirt. It's been hanging in my hallway for just today. And it goes with this jacket. So I'm excited. I hope that today all of you will feel really free to have fun with costume changes during the break, if that's what you're into. Play around with your Zoom background, right? Play music in your background that you want to dance to. It doesn't matter if we can't hear it. It's awesome. And if you need to step away and take care of life because you're at home, if you need to get a snack, please do all of those things, right? We know that Zoom life is hard. And let's remember to support each other and do everything we can to make this Zoom experience awesome and comfortable for everybody. I want to just thank all of you for dedicating some of your precious self-care time to us today. And I hope that all of the awesome content that we're going to be sharing today is going to make that a worthwhile investment for all of you. We're just so excited to have you here. So let's see, I got slides. So this is me, I'm Cheryl, and these are all the amazing people, this is like a fraction of the amazing people who have helped put on the conference today. They're the ones who got titles. But there's lots of other folks that have been helpful, and I just want to call out and thank all of them, especially Colleen, whose name tag says Women in Agile, but Colleen Esposito is running the tech for us today, is taking care of all the stuff relating to Zoom. If you have challenges with the tech, or if anything arises that you need help with, please do use the Women in Agile Slack channel. We have a WIA conference help. We have a 2020 conference help channel that you can post in. We have folks who are monitoring that channel. Because if you DM me, I am busy, I will not see it. But we have wonderful, wonderful helpers whose job it is to catch if anything goes on that you may need assistance with. And then just shout out to all the other folks who have done work before, during, and some will after to make this conference great for all of you. And many thanks to everyone who helped us with the big pivot from Orlando to online. What I think is exciting about that is that it's an opportunity for those of you who maybe weren't going to be able to go to Orlando anyway to join us. And when I worked at Pivotal, we talked about, one of the things I learned when I was there is the idea that when one person is remote, we should all be remote, because it's a great equalizer for everybody. So this is not like, hey, we stuck a camera in the back of the room and you can join online and not be able to hear anybody. We're all on a level playing field, and in that way, I think it's helpful. A quick overview of the agenda. This is also in the email that you received with the login details, and I'll be recapping it at the beginning of each of the breaks. I wanted to especially call your attention to the longer breaks that we'll be taking, because we know that all of you are at home. We know that you have life. You need to go get a snack. You may need to take care of kids. I have dogs. They'll be joining us later for the conference. They're going to want me to walk them sometime in the next several hours. So we have half-hour breaks in between these chunks of content. We hope that you will take that time to do whatever you need to do to rest and refresh, and come back and join us for our next segments. The times are a little irregular because not everything is exactly an hour, but we'll do our best to uphold that half-hour break whenever, starting from whatever time we take it. At the end of this conference, it's not exactly a formal thing, but those of you who at the conclusion would like to stay on, bring your favorite beverage, and just chat with people, it's a very large Zoom. Who knows? It might work. So we'll encourage all of you to participate as you wish. Of course, that's totally optional. And if you have a life to get back to, or if it's bedtime where you live, do what you need to do, but you're all very much welcome. All right, super important thing. We want to talk about the code of conduct, and I have a particular take on codes of conduct that I want to make sure that, like, not only that you all hear, but I hope that you will all share as you travel to other conferences. In my opinion, a code of conduct is not about who we chase and who we punish. It is about who we support. And all of us have had the experience of not feeling welcome, not feeling supported, and in some cases not feeling safe at a big technical conference or in a great big male-dominated environment, right? Or in places where we are marginalized for any of our many other identities. And I think it's most important that our code of conduct speaks to that you should feel safe and supported at all times during this conference. And if that is ever not true, please talk to us, because we want to figure out how to support you and help you. If that includes that someone has done you harm and we need to deal with that, take them out of the situation, obviously that is part of it. But a bigger part of it is we want to hear from you. What does it take to make you feel safe and supported? We have the WIA Conference Help channel on Slack that you can use to report any issues that may arise today with respect to the code of conduct. You are also welcome to reach out to us directly. You can talk to the conduct@womeninagile.org email. Obviously, the turnaround time on that is going to be different. And if anybody needs to reach out to me personally or Natalie after the conference to share any concerns, I hope you will do that. We'll do a shorter recap of the code of conduct at every segment so that if folks are joining us during the break, we want to make sure that everybody's heard that message, and do please share. You can read the full code of conduct on the Women in Agile website, and it is pinned in the Slack channel. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Okay, with that, I would like to introduce, one of my favorite parts of being the host is that I get to introduce people, which means I get to say nice things about them. Natalie and I have known each other since the very first, what was that? The open space conversation that we had at the first Agile Alliance conference I ever went to. Natalie and I met and talked about Women in Agile. And there is one person from that entire conversation who took the initiative to do years of work setting up Women in Agile as a certified nonprofit. Not something I could do. I'm here supporting and cheerleading, but Natalie did a lot of hard bureaucratic work and talked to lawyers and accountants and got us established as a 501c3, and I'm super proud to know her. And I'd like to introduce her to give an update on all things Women in Agile.org.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thanks, everyone. So excited to see everyone on here. And I do have my phone right next to me because I'm monitoring the email boxes to ensure that everyone is able to get in, because people are reaching out from a lot of different avenues. So thanks for bearing with us through the technology, and obviously everyone's learning. So I'm thrilled to be here. I am so thrilled to have this wonderful group of ladies who took on our flagship conference this year. Like Cheryl said, this is officially year number 5 of Women in Agile, working with the Agile Alliance, and we're very excited. We are very humbled by both what we're doing with this technology and adapting, and also just with this amazing group of people. So again, thank you so much. And these ladies have taken something that was started 5 years ago and really put their own unique spin to it. And I'm so excited that I get to sit back and be a participant here. So if you want to go to the next slide, I'll just give you a few updates on Women in Agile.org as the 501c3. So the reason that this started was, there was a very obvious lack of diversity and representation, specifically at Agile conferences, but obviously we know that disparity is within technology as well. And that led to, some fear and some intimidation for some folks. For some folks, it didn't, but it was a systemic issue where, this lack of diversity, lack of safety, those types of things were causing, women and other people from underrepresented groups to opt out of participating. And so our voices were being lost. They weren't being heard. And that's an issue for everyone, because there's so many good ideas that aren't being amplified. And so what Women in Agile has become, and what we're constantly looking to do, is to address this cycle of underrepresentation through many different ways, this conference being just one of them. So if you want to go to the next slide. you know, our goal with Women in Agile is really to build meaningful connections between people within the Agile community, you know, specifically women, and inspire that personal growth. And we can, you know, lean on each other to do that, lean on the community that we're growing, and then, you know, eventually continue to change the future of the workplace, change the system that we're in, right? The system was built by different people on different sets of values, and we have the capability and the passion to build it so that it works for everybody, and that's going to be a constant journey. And so that's what Women in Agile really looks to do in many different ways. So if you go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about that. um, so Women in Agile, as the nonprofit, the 501c3 that it is now, it was established in 2018. Now, I had mentioned this is year 5 of this conference. So this conference was going on before Women in Agile had been established as a 501c3. It was a social movement that, you know, really took hold and got to a spot where it was like, this is a great movement. It's awesome that we have it so decentralized, but we do need a little bit more centralization so we can do larger things and really amplify the main programs that we see around Women in Agile. Those programs include conference allyship, which this conference is a part of. Women in Agile being allies with different conferences, really focusing on that code of conduct, and Cheryl talked about it wonderfully. And so that has really grown. Seeding local communities, that's looking at our local group. We could actually go back to the previous slide, just stay on that for just one second. Thank you. Seeding local communities, that's looking at our local communities that, you know, great women like you just started building on your own. We were like, how can we better support you with technology, with money, with support and sharing ideas? Launching new voices, which is also a part of this particular conference, where we were looking at the systemic issue of, hey, I would love to be, you know, a speaker at a conference or on a podcast or something like that, but you know what? Nobody will give me any experience because I don't have any experience. And so Women in Agile, we really look to target that and say, you know what? You don't have experience? Perfect. We want you. We want to help you to get that experience. We'll pair you with a mentor, and we will give you a spot to speak, and starting to break that cycle. And then finally, our scholarship awards. This is our newest program that we just launched, and this is all around looking at the issues in the system of, hey, you know what? It would be great if I could go to a conference or go to this training, but my employer just won't support me, or maybe I'm an independent, you know, consultant, and it's really hard because if I'm not working and I'm going to something like this, then I'm not getting paid and I still have to pay for it. So our scholarship awards really look at trying to target that. And the exciting part of our scholarship awards is, like I just said, it just launched in July. We have applications open until the end of the month. So please go and check out womeninagile.org and navigate over to the scholarship page, and you can submit an application for a scholarship of something that you know, you may not be able to do otherwise. And like I said, we're taking applications up until the end of July. And I would be remiss if I did not introduce some of the other people that are really core to this, the executive officers of Women in Agile org, myself, the president and executive director, and I'm also the sponsor of the conference allyship program. Dima Dajani, who is our vice president, and Dima is the sponsor of the local communities as well as the scholarship awards, and that was you know, really a passion of hers, and it was so exciting to be able to watch her get that out there. And like I said, it's our newest program, so that's great. Joanna Valsing, who is our treasurer, and she also is the sponsor of launching new voices. Joanna was actually one of the first new voices that we launched back in 2017. So she's been with us and really been through the entire process. And then the rest of our board, Therese Pokernick and Jen Bassick and Mita Marathu. So very excited to have all of those board members, and we have a ton of amazing volunteers. And and directors of various programs. You can see all of that out on womeninagile.org. So if you want to go to the next slide here, I believe this is my last one. So where have we come in 5 years? Actually, no, I have one more after this. So in those 5 years, we have gone from a social movement, which started with hashtag Women in Agile, to a 501c3 nonprofit. Like I said, this is our 5th Agile Alliance partnered conference, and we have worked with a lot of other conferences, both pairing with larger conferences and having some of our own Women in Agile conferences that women around the world have decided to put on, and we've been able to support them. There's been some additions of code of conduct. We know at least 5 conferences that have adopted a code of conduct because of the work that we're doing to try and make their spaces more inclusive and welcoming. At last count, which was just the other day, we have 59 local groups in 26 countries with approximately 9,000 members worldwide of those groups. So wow, that has grown immensely, and our local groups are just amazing. 14 new voices launched for the Launching New Voices program, including 3 today that you will all get to see. Like I said, that scholarship program was launched. We're accepting applications until July 31st. So please go and check that out, womeninagile.org/scholarship. Women in Agile podcast. We have a podcast that we partnered with Accenture Solutions IQ, and it's on our 2nd year. We interview all of the speakers that we have, all the new voices, as well as anybody else who's interested and has things to say. So please reach out to us at podcast@womeninagile on email if you're interested in that. And we have all the information again out on the site. And let's talk a little bit about impact here. So at just a rough count, our identified female conference speaker percentages. In 2013 to 15, we were at approximately 25% at the Agile Alliance big conference. From 2016 to 2018, that went up to 35%. And last year in 2019, that was at 38%. So, the stuff that we're doing is helping. And, who knows what it would have been in 2020, unfortunately. We don't know. But we will see, and we will keep going with all of that. And I see things popping up on the chat. Once I'm done speaking, I will get in there and I will respond to any of those questions, or you can email me directly with any questions, Natalie@womeninagile.org. So next slide, please. And I think this is our last one, or this is my last one, I mean. So we love your involvement. We can't wait to hear from you, and we need to hear your voices. We always have work to do. We know as women in Agile, and one of the great things about the conference today is, we're all still learning, and we really want to ensure that we are providing an environment that gives people like you what you want, what you need, and we're representing things in the best possible way. We know we have more work to do from a diversity perspective as well, and so I'm so happy at where the conference has gone this year with our wonderful committee, like I said, and I'm so excited to see the panel that we have and just everything there. So we know that we have work to do with diversity, and continuing to better be inclusive and represent our Black members, as well as all other members too, but really lifting everybody up. So what can you do? We always have volunteer needs, everything from working with the board to help some of the programs come to life, to, hey, I'd love to contribute a blog post, or I'd love to speak or be part of the New Voices program. So that is always out there. And again, here's our website. If you are interested, if you're available to donate, donate your time, donate money, anything like that, all of our funds go right back into the community, as we are a 501c3. And we love being able to do things like offer these scholarships. We offered scholarships that folks were able to donate for this particular conference, and some people definitely needed those scholarships. And so that was something that we wanted to make sure that money was not a barrier. And that's really one of Women in Agile's missions. Other things, we will have a members meeting coming up in October of 2020. We have not set the date on that, but make sure you don't miss those announcements. If you're on this call, we have your email. We will put you on our email list, and you can opt out of that as well. But that's where you'll get updates about those types of meetings. You can also make sure and join at womeninagile.org/membership. It's free to join, and that'll just make sure that you get all the updates from us about these types of things. And then interact with us on social media. There's our Twitter, our Instagram, as well as our LinkedIn company page is on there. And we have Claire, who is monitoring all of that today, as well as, I'm kind of trying to help out while doing anything else that the amazing committee needs me to do so they can put on this amazing conference. So once again, thank you, everybody. I see our participant number right now is 213. That's just outstanding. And I hope you have a great conference. This is really a passion of all of ours, and we wouldn't be here without the involvement of the community. So please help us to continue growing and make sure that we're serving the community in the ways that you want it to be served. So thank you again for coming, and I'll hand it back to the committee, and I'm so honored.
Thank you, Natalie. Thanks again for inviting me to be part of this conference. It was fun doing it with you last year. It was fun doing it with a new committee this year. Hey folks, I meant to mention, since we're all on Zoom and we're all going to be staying muted for most of this thing, many of you are probably familiar with, my mother is deaf, and I grew up in somewhat adjacent to the deaf community. If you're not familiar, at large events with large audiences that are made up of deaf people or deaf performers, it is customary to give applause by doing this. And so that is an option for you if you feel like recognizing somebody who is speaking. Of course, you also have the cool little Zoom reaction buttons. I was a speaker last week and people used the Zoom reaction buttons for me, and it was great. So, but whatever you feel like you want to do to silently show appreciation, we definitely, I know as a speaker, it means a lot to me. So with that, so thank you, Natalie. With that comes time for me to do something I have been looking forward to for many, many months, and that is introduce our keynote speaker, who is one of my favorite humans. Kory Stamper and I have known each other a very long time. Kory is an author and a lexicographer, which is to say she writes and edits the dictionary. She has been writing about language and changing language for more than 15 years. Her best-selling book, Word by Word, which if you have not read it, please read it. It is hilarious and informative. Chronicles the wild story of English, and her writing on language and culture has appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, and the Guardian. The Chicago Tribune. I joined the Kory Stamper fan club back on Facebook many, many years ago when she was doing viral videos for Merriam-Webster. And the thing that was weird about that is that it was founded by people I didn't know. And I'm like, I know somebody who has a fan club founded by people that I don't know. Anyway, so she is currently working for Cambridge Dictionaries. And we had a really great chat when we talked about coming to talk at this conference about the ways in which agile ways of working apply to so many other industries, and we're very familiar to Kory and the type of work that she does as well. So it is my humongous honor to introduce to you Kory Stamper, lexicographer, to deliver our keynote today. Thank you for coming.
Yay! Thanks for having me, everyone.
I think you can steal the screen share, but let me know if you need me to do something.
I'm gonna steal the screen share. Here I go. All right. Okay. Here we go. I think that worked. Yay! Okay. I'm really excited to be here. So you might be wondering why a lexicographer is keynoting, because a lexicographer is not a developer. That is a writer and editor of dictionaries. And I'm not even a client in the Agile workspace. I'm actually one of those people like several levels down in the org chart that makes the really messy, nasty data the client then brings to a developer and says, hey, please make this elegant and working. So, but I'm here for two main reasons. The first is that where I'm working now, Cambridge Dictionaries, is an Agile workspace. And that means that I've gotten to know and use Agile, and it really resonates with me. And part of why it resonates with me, and the second reason I'm here, is because language really maps on well to Agile. So I'm gonna absolutely just go through this keynote. It's going to be a lot, I understand. But what I want to do is I want to examine language, especially English. I want to break apart some of our assumptions about it, and then I want to take us on a journey that starts with our own language and moves into the power of language to create space and to change culture. So the first place you have to work with, of course, is the Agile Manifesto. This is familiar to everyone. But I think it's important to go over it again because these 4 values are really going to be the basis of how we engage language and the culture around us. So we value individuals and interactions over processes and tools. We value working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan. Now, how does this work for language? Well, let's start with valuing individuals and interactions. Now, we tend to think of language as this sort of external monolithic system, right? It's this thing that sits outside of us. We access it when we need it. It is fixed. It is inscrutable. Nobody knows how it works. The reality is that language is about communication, which means that language only happens in the space of human interactions. It doesn't happen in this sort of vague and abstract space. And because it's based on nothing but human interactions, that means that we have to examine the history of human interactions, which are incredibly messy, which means that language is messy. So, language is full of hidden power structures and dynamics that we are probably not aware of because English, at least, has been going on for 1,500 years. So one of the things you probably are aware of is that English is a colonizing language, and it has been from the very beginning. English is not native to the British Isles. It was brought to the British Isles by Saxons who were in what we now think of as modern northern Germany and Denmark. They brought it over, and as they established dominance on the British Isles, so did English, which means that the languages that were on the British Isles disappeared or were suppressed. And this is one of the pathways of English history. As English became a colonizing feature in different languages, you saw other languages begin to fade. So that's one way that English became a global language, but the other way that English became a global language, and it's the other side of exactly the same coin, is that English is an incredibly flexible and accommodating language. So the linguists call languages that don't like to change conservative. So instead of borrowing words from other languages, what they'll do is they'll take the core bits of their own language and create a word that has roughly the same meaning. English is not that. English has borrowed over its 1,500-year history words from hundreds of languages from every continent on the globe, except for Antarctica, because seals do not speak a human language. We even trade language and words back and forth because it's interaction. The word karaoke is the best example of this I can think of. Karaoke is made of 2 Japanese words, kara, which means empty, and oke, which is short for okesotora, which is the Japanese borrowing of the English orchestra. So Japanese borrowed orchestra, changed it up a little bit, smashed it together with kara, and then exported karaoke when Western business people and execs started doing more and more business in Japan. So this interactivity is key to language. Language is also about working software over comprehensive documentation. Language is not software. If you work in NLP, you know that, and maybe you'll argue with me, but I'm sorry, it's true. Language is not software. What does that mean? How does that get pressed out? Well, in an Agile workspace, right, that means that it's not that you don't care about documentation, it's that you don't focus on documentation to the point of hindering the work of the team making the software. And the same thing works for language. Language is always being refined. It is iterative. It is made to change. Every time a word moves from one context, so one group of speakers, one area, one time period, one industry, anytime it switches, it changes. Now, this is very, sort of abstract. Let's just look at the word nice. When nice first came into English in the 1300s, it referred to a foolish person. It was a really nasty word to talk about someone who was foolish. And if you look at the development, you can see the subtle shifts that happen as each speaker group takes nice and adapts it. So in the span of, about 700 years, we went from foolish to today, where nice just kind of is a bland way to talk about something pleasant. Now, I work on the documentation side of language. So I feel this tension between the working software and the comprehensive documentation. Dictionaries are not on the working software part of this. Dictionaries document language. And the documentation of the language is not the language, just like software documentation is not the software. What are dictionaries? Dictionaries are a 30,000-foot snapshot of the language in use at a particular time in a particular place. And that means when you are up at that altitude, you're going to lose some detail. And unfortunately, the way you document, the details you do document, means that sometimes you're not sharing everything about a word that needs to be shared. So I want to look at shade. Merriam-Webster made news in 2017 for entering the slang meaning of shade into its dictionaries. It made news because it sent out a press release, because we have to do something to get people to come to dictionary websites, because we need people to use dictionaries. Now, the definition of throw shade in the Merriam-Webster dictionary marks that this use is US slang. And that's true. It's slang that's used mostly in America. But that's kind of a set documentation way of talking about a really complex word. What this doesn't tell you is that throw shade originated with a particular kind of slang, with a particular community. Throw shade actually originated in the Black and Latinx drag queen ballroom culture in New York in the 70s and 80s. But because we're used to thinking of slang as young people's language, because that's what dictionaries and everyone who writes about language says, you see US slang and you think, oh, it's like white kids on TikTok. And that's kind of true now, but you lose a lot of nuance when you rely on documentation over the actual software. All right, customer collaboration. Now, how are you going to work this? Well, in Agile, when this value is pressed out, right, it generally means that you stop seeing other stakeholders in a project as adversaries. When you negotiate a contract, you're setting firm boundaries around all sorts of things. Who does what, when they're supposed to deliver it, what you should be getting back from the other team, what the repercussions are if the deliverable doesn't match the spec, etc., etc. It's not that those things aren't valuable. They are valuable. But focusing on those things over collaboration introduces territoriality. And this happens in language all the time. Language is about interaction, and we know that power structures exist within interaction. Language is iterative, and that makes language messy. The other thing that's important is that language is inherently collaborative. It's weirdly democratic because every person who uses English is a vital stakeholder in it. Every person. They can influence the direction that the entire language takes. Every change that's ever been made to language, every change, has always started with one person. And that is a huge amount of power. That also means that it's terrifying to people who currently are the gatekeepers of what they think of as power. So how does the territoriality play out in English? I'm going to go really deep. Most of the grammar rules that you were taught in high school are really on the contract negotiation side of this, right? So what we think of is we think of the way that you talk. So you end sentences with prepositions, or you split infinitives to boldly go where no one has gone before, or you use the singular they and everyone knows that they is a plural pronoun. And there's this distant land that is the realm of perfect English, and you are not in the realm of perfect English. These rules, we've just all learned them and thought, well, this is what English is. This is not what English is. Because what this is taking you, an important stakeholder in the language, and treating you like an adversary. Let me tell you where these rules came from. These rules were enacted in the 16, 17, and 1800s by gatekeepers of education in Britain. Why? Because English in 1600 became a really widespread language. There's a boom in trade, there was a whole lot of imperialism going on. English was coming into contact with all sorts of different people, and other people were using English, and they were using English in ways that were specific to their own place, their own identity. And this freaked out the predominantly Protestant white dudes in Britain who oversaw education. What they said is, we need to make English a beautiful, elegant, lovely thing that people aspire to. So they decided they were going to base English on another beautiful, elegant, lovely language, which was Latin. So they took a whole bunch of rules that hold in Latin and imposed them on English. The problem here is that these rules are only specific to Latin. The ability to split an infinitive, to boldly go somewhere, to go without somewhere, to use singular they, these are all inherent to English. They're older than the rules that ban them. And that's also why you have to learn them. They're not a natural part of the language. So these rules are here because the traditional view that people have of English is that it is territory to be protected. It is not a space of collaboration. And if it's territory to be protected, it can never, ever change. And that brings us to the fourth value, which is responding to change. Language changes. This is a reality. It is not an opinion. It's just fact. And you can't stop that language changes. For a language to thrive, for a language to not become a dead language, it must change. The speakers of that language need to constantly be creating new words, constantly be engaging in new spaces with it. Once a language stops changing, it's dead. Dead languages are not languages that don't have any speakers anymore. They're languages that don't change. And it's the same in an Agile workspace, right? Like if you have a project where change is not allowed, then you know that there's an ossification. You lose something in that space. The real question here is, how do you handle these changes? How do you respond to these changes? That it changes is just the way it is. So how do you respond? Do you hold on to what you think is important because it's an anchor in a changing world? Do you hold on to irregardless is not a word? Do you hold on to don't end a sentence with a preposition? Do you hold on to it even if equal stakeholders in your project called English tell you that that's not true? Do we like stasis because it's comfortable, because it doesn't require anything of us? Or do we commit to responding to change when we're faced with it? There's one more word in the manifesto that I want to look at, and that is value. The last sentence of the manifesto says, while there is value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left. I am going to get super nerdy with you right now, and I'm going to do something that linguists call discourse analysis. Discourse analysis is where you look at the way that particular words are used or are not used and sort of the preponderance of ways that we use them, and you peel back the meaning. And you sort of look at what are the sociolinguistic implications of this? What are the connotations in this? Okay, so let's look at the difference between something that has value and valuing something. Has value. I just 2 days ago bought my first house. It's a very big deal. Now that I'm 50, Cheryl's applauding. Now that I'm nearly 50, I decided to do the thing that marks adulthood in American society. But this means that for the last month, I've been absolutely buried in conversations about value. Right? The appraiser tells me my house is valued at blah, blah, blah. The contractor says if you do this, then you're going to increase the value of your house by blah, blah, blah. If you look at that phrase, has value, is valued at, what that generally means, the connotation we give that, is that it has monetary value and that it's usually used as something that's external, right? My house is valued at, that piece of software has the value of blah, blah, blah. These aren't bad things. This is just how the brain is hardwired, this phrase. But to value something is really different. If you value something, that means that you think it is important, you think it is excellent, that you are willing to spend your time and effort because that thing is worth your time and effort. And value is internal. If you value something, you hold it close to you. So my house has value. There's a number ascribed to it, but I value it because it will become my home. Those are different emphases. This means in an Agile workspace, regardless of where you are in the org chart, if you value individuals, interactions, collaboration, iteration, change, that means you internalize those things. And when you internalize those things, it should affect every interaction you have. That brings us back to language. The language we use lays the groundwork for our communication with other people and the space that we create for that communication to happen in. This means that language is one of the most powerful tools in your toolkit to change a system. I'm going to take us through a couple of examples. I'm going to start with one that's fairly innocuous. Oh, this is what we value. Hey guys. So, this example actually came to me from someone, Women in Agile. And this woman said, you know, I just started a new job. Job is amazing, but I swear we start every daily meeting with, hey guys. And it just reminds me every day that women have had to fight their way into this industry. That's something I'm sure a lot of us feel. Maybe hey guys is not the trigger for us. But let's flip it. Let's say that you are that team lead. You're the one that opens your daily meeting with hey guys. You're the one that introduces every email with hey guys. And you have a teammate come to you and say, hey, can we find a different way to start meetings? Because it just takes me out of the meeting. Or I just don't like it very much. There are generally 3 responses people make to requests to watch their language. The first one is to defend. Sometimes this looks like an apology. It's not. I'm sorry, but, or I'm sorry you feel that way, but anything that includes but is a defense. The thing about a defense is it usually appeals to something that's external, and it puts your teammate's comment in opposition to that. I'm sorry you feel that way, but we have a lot of women on this team, and you're the only person that takes issue with this. I'm sorry you feel this way, but we have a deliverable tomorrow, and you are taking away important time from this team doing the work it needs to do right now. Now, a defense is pretty clear, right? There's a visceral response. You may also hear some splaining. So there's a difference between splaining and explaining. When you explain something, you're sharing information to someone who is interested in hearing about it. When you splain something, you are sharing information so that somebody else will shut up and will do what you want to do. Splaining here would look like, oh, you know, I'm sorry, but I checked some dictionaries and I read a couple of blog posts that said that while guys did originally just refer to men, it's actually been used now of mixed gender groups and all gender groups, and it's even used with groups that are just women. Okay, now when you're defending something, you're communicating to someone, I don't value your thoughts enough to engage you with this. When you're splaining something, what you're communicating is, I think I know better than you do. Are you saying those actual words? No, but language is interaction. So your intention only goes halfway. It is what the other person receives and interprets that continues that interaction. What's your third response? Your third response is to engage. I don't mean you're going to engage with the facts of the situation or the facts that you think are in that situation. I mean you're going to engage with the individual. This involves active listening. It involves repeating back to the person what you've heard them say so that you know that you understand. It involves a lot of humility. You can be honest. You can say, I didn't realize it bothered you. But the next words out of your mouth had better be an unqualified, I'm sorry. Part of what engagement means is that you don't just say you're sorry, but you take active steps to fix it. Which means that you need to take the 5 minutes to come up with an alternate for you guys. I've given you some alternates here. This is something that I've thought a lot about. So what you need to do is you need to pick one, but don't pick one uncritically. Think, how will my team respond to these things? If I call my team crew, are they going to feel like that's weird? Like, are they going to respond better to folks? Are they going to respond better to everyone? Should I just drop the collective noun and say, hey, that's also fine? The reason you need to think about it is because you need to tell your teammate then that you're going to try to stop using hey guys, and you think you're going to try and use hey folks, or hey y'all, or hey friends. This way, they know that you're valuing the individual. You're valuing the interaction. And when you tell them you're doing this, you're inviting them into a collaborative space. You're inviting them to create a better space with you. Are you going to make mistakes? Oh yeah, totally. Language is pattern. Our brains love pattern. It's going to take you a long time to rewire the hey guys synapses. That is just the way it goes. Does that mean you should stop trying? No. Does that mean you're going to have to pay attention in a way that's hard? Yeah. I'm sorry. That's what change involves. Change means that you're going to have to pay attention in a way that costs you something. And when you slip up then, you slip up in your team meeting, what do? You correct yourself quickly. You do not gesture at or nod to or call out or wink in a cartoonish manner at the person who has brought this to your attention. Because the reality is you're not changing this for them. You are not changing this for an individual. You are using language change to create a better collaborative space. for everybody, for the people that are on your team now and the people that might come into your team. You might not know if you hire a developer who's non-binary, who doesn't use any gendered pronoun, who doesn't like ladies or guys or anything like that. If you future-proof your language, that's always going to invite people in. Okay, what if you're the teammate? What if you're the person who says, I don't like hey guys? Your job doesn't just stop with saying, I don't like hey guys, because language is interaction and exchange. This means that you need to continue to engage with the person who is trying to change their language. Let's say that they miss it. You know, they go a couple of team meetings and they still say, hey guys. DM them, pull them aside. Let's say that they say, hey guys, and then they correct, hey folks. DM them, thank them. Positive reinforcement's awesome. It engenders respect. And respect breeds respect. Changing language changes the culture. Let's move on to something that's a little bit more intense. Let's talk about Scrum Master for a little bit. This is super, super, super emotional. So I'm sure that most of you know this. In the event that you don't, lots of organizations, libraries, various developers have all started removing racially loaded terms like master and slave from their documentation, from their active use. And the title Scrum Master, there's currently a petition to change the title of Scrum Master. Now, why? Why would you need to change those things? We don't have, some people will say, masters and slaves today. Who cares? Well, the fact is that language is personal. Language is about interaction. Language is felt in the body. Anybody who has been called any kind of derogatory term knows that. You carry that. So that means that master, even if we don't have slavery as it was in the 1850s in America, still has connotations. Let's take a look at master. Let's do a little bit more nerdcraft. So it came into English in 800, it referred only to a male teacher. Around 900, it broadened its uses, and it was used of a man in any authority position, right? So you would have the canon master, who was actually, that was an ecclesiastical thing. By 1300, it had developed this slightly different shift in emphasis, and it referred to a man that had authority by dint of controlling something through ownership. So you had a ship's master, you had the master of an estate, and then by 1500, you had a master being someone who controls people, who owns enslaved people. This is historical. We don't use the word master this way anymore, but we all know that that resonates, that pairing of master and slave resonates through our language, and not just in tech. It's not just that we're talking about master and slave processes or master and slave hard drives. If you get your brakes changed in your car and you have disc brakes, you know what they replace? The master cylinder and the slave cylinder. This has permeated the language thoughtlessly, which means it will take intention to remove it. So when I first heard about these changes, I was really curious to see what the response would be, because I deal with language change for a living. So I went to Twitter, which was my first mistake, and you will not be surprised at all to hear that people said, thanks, I hate it. We gotta keep Scrum Master. We gotta keep master and slave. The comments kind of were all over the place. Some people were saying, no, Scrum Master is about mastery. All right, let's unpack mastery for a little bit. Its original meanings referred to conquest in battle, so you physically beat someone, or it referred to having authority by dint of controlling something, not gaining authority, but being given authority because of your social status. Even now, when you gain mastery in something, the only way you really gain mastery is when other people recognize that you have gained mastery and are willing to follow your mastery. It is still a role full of power, whether that's absolutely clear or not. Other people complained that this was stupid and no one cared. I do not think that Linux, Drupal, GitHub, Python, and Apple engineers are no one. I think that if those people care, then maybe we should care. And then there was just the appeal to the status quo. One tweet that I saw said, "We have a certification program for that role. What am I going to put on my resume?" Which, it's really easy to read these as someone who does not like the term master in your industry and roll your eyes and just say, "Oh, these people are racists." But that is not a commitment to engaging. I'm not saying get on Twitter and respond to these people. Do not do that to yourself. What I mean is do some discourse analysis. Peel back. What are they really saying here? When you engage with what people are saying, why they don't like change, it always comes down to fear. Stasis is comfortable. The status quo is great, especially if you're on top of the pile. Change is iterative, change is messy, change is hard. And people often come to any kind of thing that requires change with a poverty mindset, and language especially. The poverty mindset says we have a finite number of words, and if you remove this word from me, then there will be a lack. There will be a hole. I will never be able to fully recover that word. And that's not really how that works. If you take away guys as a gender neutral collective noun, it's not that you've diminished English by one word. You have actually created an opening that will be filled, I'm not kidding, by probably several dozen words. That's how that works. English is change. Change is iterative. Change is ongoing. You can't stop change. So don't approach these things with a poverty mindset that will take from you. You will only gain through change, through a commitment to change. And you know what? Over 1,500 years, we have had tens of thousands of words come into English and depart English. And some of those words have been fabulous. And you know what? The language isn't dead. It's still flourishing. It's flourishing because the people who use it are committed to change. When you decide to intentionally change the language you use, you communicate what you value to the world. And that moment, that communication of what's important or excellent or worthy, that's the thing that changes culture. So you remember I said earlier that change happens with one person. The way it usually works is if you drop a rock in a pond. That new use is one instance. It's one event. But it ripples out. It has effects outward. You don't have to tackle everything at once. You can't. I do language change for a living, and I often feel like I can barely make it through an 8-hour day. So focus on the things you can change. One small thing. You could start with, hey guys, you could take on Scrum Master. You could ask to change the documentation around master slave on the back end. Whatever you need to do, start with one small thing. Language is bigger than you, but there must be a precipitating event. You may never see the waves hit the shore. Language change is a slow process. Iteration is a slow process, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. Changing language is truly agile, and to be agile, we change language. And that is my keynote today. I'm going to stop the screen share so that Cheryl can have it back.
I miss the yelling and stomping. I'm just going to say it. I miss it. I'm going to do some of it here in my own room. but I saw lots of you enjoy it. Kory, thank you so much. I have been following the chat, and we've been having so much fun reacting and taking on board some of the ideas that you've shared with us. I see calls to action already. I'm so excited by what all of you on this conference are going to take and share with the world as a result of what you have learned. And I'm just so grateful for all the work that you did to pull all of your language knowledge and experience in and make it so meaningful to all of us and the work that we do. So thank you so much, everybody. Okay, I'm going to share screen for one purpose. That is the break slide. Okay, so we're here, and holy cow, I have never run a conference on time in my life. Thank you, everybody. It is, it is the top of the hour, wherever you are. It's 10 o'clock where I am in the morning. We are going to take a 30-minute break. We may or may not play music during the break. Some that works, some it doesn't. If you want to hang out during the break and chat with amazing people at the Women in Agile conference, feel free to unmute yourself and have a conversation. If you don't, because you got life going on, I got dogs, they want me to feed them, you know, do your thing, but be back here at the bottom of the hour, and we'll kick off with our amazing Black Women's Lens panel and speakers. So look forward to seeing you then. Thank you again, Kory.